It's funny. You work on these movies, both say with Jim Cameron and Steven Spielberg, and sometimes you think, oh, it's a lot of work, and you tend to forget about the fact that you're working with two just great directors who are just so experienced. And the thing that's nice about it is that you can just listen to the way in which they ask you, the changes they ask you to do, and it's such an education. You get to learn so much about the filmmaking process that just really helps us out. In terms of technology and some of our challenges, it would have been good. We'd helped solve a lot of things on Avatar that helped us out a lot. Tintin had some big challenges in that a lot of the sets were indoors, so we wanted to adjust some of our lighting tools so that we had much more naturalistic looking light and much more photographic looking images. So that was definitely a big challenge. And one of the other big challenges for us CG wise was just the world of Tintin is so big. We created so many thousands and thousands and thousands of assets just to populate this world and to bring his world to life, and all the background characters and everything else. There was just, Hergé's world is so rich, and we had a lot of work to do to try and fill that world up. It's such a difficult thing to take something that's so well known, like the artwork of Tintin, and because Hergé had such a distinctive and such a refined and such a great style to the way in which he drew the albums and drew the comics. So when we have to make a change, we do everything. We think very deeply about everything, and the only time we make a change is when we have to, because ultimately we're making a movie. It's a very different visual medium, and we have to adapt what we do to match, and that might be the shape of Tintin's face so that we can put emotion into it, or so that we can light it and get some shape into it. Constraints that Hergé didn't have on him at the time, but we always go back to the artwork. That's always our basis for everything that we do. I think we have made more steps in terms of performance capture and in capturing actors' faces. I also think we've made a lot of steps in understanding how a face actually works, because the truth is that when you talk or when you look or when you perform something, it isn't just about what your lips are doing or just about what your cheeks or the eyes. There are just hundreds of subtle little things that are happening on your face. And one of the problems is that we see people every day and we see their faces and we know what they look like. And that's been one of the tricky things with performance capture when you try and do something that looks human, because as people, we recognize all the things that aren't there. And that's why people say maybe the face looks dead or it doesn't look alive. So for us, some of it's about technology, and some of it's just about us understanding as an art form how to animate very human faces. We do constantly work on new software. Some things we build on, some things we have to build new things for as we go into different movies to really deal with the challenges that they might bring up. But we constantly look at, because our world is constantly changing, the scope and the scale of what we're being asked to do is constantly changing and increasing. So we have to always be thinking ahead, not just for the next movie, but the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, what we might be asked to do, and we try to develop core software tools and core technology to deal with that, and hopefully we get it right. We learned a lot on Avatar, and I think as a company we learned a lot on Avatar for stereo, so then we could bring a lot of that through to Tintin. But even then, there are different, how James Cameron, how he set up his cameras in stereo for Avatar was a little different than how Steven wanted to film things for Tintin. So we were still learning the rules of stereo as we went through, and stereo has a lot of rules and things that you have to be careful with.